and I'm excited to have, and it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Mark Bartlett. He has been my friend and colleague for the last 7.5 years that I've been working in this business, and as I focused on the scanner and the Pharmanex side of this company, I got to know the folks over here in Pharmanex, and especially Mark and Dr. Joe Chang and others, and realized our science was significantly different than others, and went and built a nice big business with our scanner and our Pharmanex line, ageLOC line. Dr. Mark Bartlett, he's our Vice President of Global Research and Development for Pharmanex, and comes from Australia, so he has an amazing accent that you guys will love. And he did extensive research in cardiovascular disease with an emphasis on free radicals, antioxidants, human inflammatory response diseases, as those may sound familiar to a lot of you. Led some research at the National Institute of Health here in the United States, as well as the world-renowned National Cancer Institute, working with T cells in the blood vessels. He has expertise in many, many areas of immunology, the entire internal body. He's been with Nu Skin over 20 years, 22, I believe now.
Right.
And absolutely my honor and pleasure to have Dr. Mark Bartlett on today to go through the scanner, some ageLOC, and some youth R-squared, and any other questions you guys may put up for us today. So welcome, Mark.
Great, thanks. It's good to be here. I feel like one of those operators standing by, with my funny headset here, but that's the only way we could get the sound to work this morning. So thanks for inviting me to your boot camp. I don't know much about social selling, but I do know a little bit about human wellness and aging, right? I've been with, as Kim mentioned, been with Nu Skin for 22 years now. And before that, I was doing medical research. So it's a bit of a switch, but I love the switch. I was always just a little bit of background, working in the area of autoimmunities and also with cancer and cancer metastasis, right? And one of the things that I really enjoyed was looking at natural compounds that are able to help the human body. And as you probably know, these natural compounds are often turned into drugs, right? So that's where most of the drugs come from, is from the natural world, from plants, from roots, from whatever it might be. And then chemists get a hold of them and they methylate them or do certain things to them or conjugate them to other molecules to make them more active and more patentable. And then they are used to help treat disease, whatever it might be. And they're amazing. But I was always more fascinated with the thought that even though we might craft these natural compounds into drugs that cure disease once it's happened, these plant molecules are bioactive from the start. Maybe not as potent, maybe not as targeted, but they're bioactive from the start, right? So I was always fascinated with the concept that if you ate these plants or became aware of these bioactives from the plants while you're healthy and you consume them, then maybe they would have a preventive health effect, right? And so that's really what led me to Nu Skin, which was back in that day in 1996 when I joined the company. It was called IDN, right? It was standing for Interior Design Nutritionals. And that's kind of an interesting story in itself, right? It's designing the body from the inside out. There are three topics that Kim wanted me to cover today. One was the scanner, and I think last week, if you were on the call, Tanner told you a lot about the scanner, right? Hopefully you got all the basics there, what the scanner score means, all of those things, but I'll just recap a little bit today maybe, if that's all right. And then let's talk a little bit about our ageLOC platform, and I've got 30 minutes to do that, so I hope that we can learn a lot in 30 minutes. So what about the scanner, the Biophotonic Scanner? This is really interesting. There is I was talking about plant bioactives, and there is a plant bioactive called a carotenoid. I'm going to share my screen with you for a minute to show you the molecular structure of a carotenoid, because I'm sure there's a bunch of chemists out there that are really interested in that, right? So, okay, can you see this here? These molecules here are carotenoids. They have an interesting structure, but from the bottom of the slide, you can see that they come from the plants. So beta-carotene, hello, there we go. Beta-carotene, you're probably all familiar with, right? The carrot, down the bottom of the screen here is orange because of this carotenoid. And lutein is a yellow carotenoid, so you'll find that in, say, the corn here and in green leafy vegetables like the kale. Lots of lutein in the kale. Lutein, you've probably heard, is good for your eyes, right? And beta-carotene as well. Lycopene, this structure up here, the boring one, is from tomatoes, and so on. So you can see now that carotenoids are colorful, and we're coming into autumn, right? So you should be able to start seeing the true colors of the plants coming up very soon in all of your, when the chlorophyll gets stripped out of the leaves of the trees, you're going to start seeing those beautiful carotenoids. And they're good for the trees. They help them to harvest the light and do photosynthesis and all of those things, but they're good for us because they're antioxidants. So they're a first line of defense against free radical damage and aging. And they're also very useful in the eye, especially, the ones that I mentioned, because they actually help to filter out the blue light. They also help with being able to see with vision, but blue light is the most active. It's a short wavelength light. It's the closest thing to ultraviolet, right? You've got violet, ultraviolet. Blue is on right next to violet. It's a very active form of radiation. It can damage the eye. So carotenoids in the eye are very useful. So it turns out that the human body can't make the carotenoids, but you need to consume them in your diet. Okay, so if you're consuming a lot of carotenoids in your diet, what else does that mean? It means you're probably eating a lot of vegetables and fruits. And what do we know about fruits and vegetables? Well, our grandmother first, and now all sorts of health authorities, the USDA, the CDC, everyone is telling us you really need to eat more vegetables, right? Fruits and vegetables, but emphasis on vegetables. And all of the epidemiological research tells us that you have a much better resistance to cardiovascular disease and other diseases like cancer if you eat a diet that's rich in these fruits and vegetables, partly due to the fact that they're antioxidants, and that prevents a myriad of conditions, but also just the other health benefits that are given to you by fruits and vegetables. So wouldn't it be great if we could motivate people to eat more fruits and vegetables? Wouldn't that be great? So what do? The government spends millions of dollars. They do surveys. They find out the average American eats 2 or 3 servings a day. That's not enough. You need like 10 to 13. And so how do you motivate people to do that? All sorts of campaigns. Tell them about, the benefits. Tell them about, what happens if you don't. Generally, every 10 years we do these big surveys and we find that people's behavior is the same. So how do you change that behavior? Let's switch gears and look at cholesterol. I guess about 40 years ago, they couldn't measure cholesterol, right? So if you had a cholesterol issue, how did they know you had it at all? And does cholesterol affect, cardiovascular disease risk? It seems that it does. But when they discovered how to measure it easily with a blood test, then the doc could say, okay, here's what you need to do about it. Change your lifestyle or take this drug if it's bad enough, right? So that's a motivating factor, no? Measuring carotenoids would be wonderful, but nobody wants to give blood and it's an expensive test. So, about 15 years ago, the University of Utah, some scientists were dabbling in that area of carotenoids. Scientists knew at that time that if you had low levels of lutein and zeaxanthin in the macula of the eye, that you're much more likely to get an age-related macular degeneration, right, which then was then the leading cause of blindness in America. So how to prevent that? You need more of those carotenoids in the eye. So these physicists started using Raman spectroscopy to measure carotenoids. Bottom line is they found that Raman spectroscopy works, that a low level of a very narrow bandwidth of light can activate these carotenoids and turn them from green to blue, from blue to green, right? So that's where the scanner comes in. And the company spent about $70 million converting this huge device that was in the basement of the Division of Biooptics of Physics at the University of Utah into this device here, which used a laser. So you can see a warning at the bottom there, right? Laser, warning, danger. But it used a laser, and it took about 2 minutes with the hand in front of the scanner to measure, just using light, your carotenoid levels. This was a huge breakthrough because suddenly now you didn't have to have a blood test or anything. Suddenly people are aware, basically, how many fruits and vegetables are you eating. Are you eating as many as you thought? If your score is low, maybe you need to start working on eating more fruits and vegetables, right? And at the time, we had a product called LifePak. I don't have one here, but I'm sure you've all seen it, right? LifePak, we designed to be full of nutrients, right? Vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and some of those antioxidants were carotenoids. So we have huge databases of what people eat and what people should be eating, right? We know that the average person, if you eat a diet of fruits and vegetables that's rich in fruits and vegetables, 10 servings, then you're getting a certain amount of lutein, beta-carotene, alpha-carotene, zeaxanthin, lycopene, all those carotenoids. And we actually baked those into our product before the scanner came. So when people that were habitual LifePak users started scanning on the scanner, how were their scores? Generally quite high, right? Because we're trying to give people the nutrients that they'd get from a diet rich in fruits and vegetables. So the beauty of that then is that you can scan, and if you have, well, let's talk about it as it's an amazing medical tool, and I guess I focus too much on that. I focus on the science, and I just think this is an amazing breakthrough, right? We can finally tell, just using light, this nutritional lie detector test. If you think you're eating fruits and vegetables, let's see, and usually it will bear out. But let's talk about it as a business tool. Okay, it's easy for me to do science. I think it's tough for you guys to do business. And if you're in the business of nutrition, if you're passionate about it, and if you want to change people's lives, and if you want people to have good health, you will go to them maybe with a vitamin supplement, or maybe you'll call your friend. Hey, I've joined this new company. It's wonderful. It's called Nu Skin. We have the best, most scientifically substantiated nutritional supplements. Would you like to talk to me about them? Would you like to buy some, right? I don't know how you guys do it. It's kind of tough, right? And I think you probably get a lot of no's. Am I right? A lot of people, yeah, I'm not so sure about that. But what if you could come to them with the latest, and by the way, we've gone through a couple of generations of scanner, right? So this is the S2. Now we have this beautiful S3 scanner, just connected to an iPad, right? Now you call your friend, and it's a different kind of a conversation, right? You know, working in conjunction with the University of Utah Division of Biooptics, Nu Skin has discovered a way to measure carotenoids using light. It's non-invasive and it takes 30 seconds. Now, at that point, your friend on the other end of the phone is like, what the devil? He just said 2 or 3 words I didn't understand. Carotenoids? It opens up a conversation. And, would you like me to come over to your house and would you like to be tested for carotenoids? It's non-invasive. It's going to tell you what your skin antioxidant levels are. It's such an easier conversation, isn't it? I think it would be. And it turns out that this conversation is going on around the world. There's a couple of conversations a minute going on around the world every day, every night, 24/7, right? So it's just a much easier way to introduce your friends to a nutritional sort of concept, right? Starting with LifePak and other products that we have. All right, well, that's 15 minutes on of our 30 minutes already there.
You
And
can
I want to introduce.
you can have as many minutes as you like, Mark.
But let me put this into perspective, right? So Nu Skin is really interested in human health and aging well, right? That's the point. So when we talk about, you've probably heard of this concept of anti-aging, and you may hear that at Nu Skin from some of the distributors. Kim might even say that, right? And what we mean by that is, first of all, we are not against old people, right? This is not an ageist philosophy, anti-aging. That's not what we mean, right? The next thing that people might think is, oh, living forever, right? Long lifespan. It's all about lifespan. And that, if you start talking about that, which is not what we're talking about, immediately people say, well, that's kind of far-fetched, right? What we're talking about actually is health span, meaning compression of morbidity. Now, compression of morbidity basically means, let's say this is your lifespan, right? 0 to, let's say it's 100, right? Even if you live to 100, a lot of people are sick and sort of not enjoying life for that 10 or 20 years before they die, right? So that period of time is called morbidity. And if you compress that, what that means is that basically you're left with a healthy life all the days of your life, right? And that's the goal. We want to be healthy all the days of our life. So how do we achieve that? And nutrition is the foundation of that. We know from tons of studies now that, nutrients, if they're in short supply, then the body has to do a sort of a triage. It says, okay, you don't have enough calcium, but calcium is really important for, everyone thinks it's only for bones, right? But it's actually important for neuromuscular uh, activity. You can't move, you can't think without calcium and magnesium, some of these minerals, right? So the body knows that, and in order to keep you alive today, to keep you moving, to keep you thinking, it will starve other parts of the body from calcium that it needs, right? Less important systems of the body, like the bones. So your bone density will suffer. So, that's an immediate example of a morbidity issue. If you don't get all the calcium and magnesium that you need now, then you won't really notice, but as you get older, you're going to notice with porous bones, right? And all the nutrients have the same story. So we do not want to be marginally deficient in any of the nutrients. That's why we have LifePak, because it gives you 100% of all that you need, right? So that it takes away that risk. It's your insurance policy. There you go, right there.
This
And I
is the
had not mine
nano,
this
but
morning. Yep.
this
And
is
I've
the
been
nano, but
consuming
I think
LifePak
you
for,
do
yes, I've been consuming that for 22 years, right?
half.
So that's the first kind of bubble in terms of, wellness and compression of morbidity and aging well. Now, the second thing is antioxidant science, right? We need to understand antioxidant science in order to be really healthy, and that's what I've already described, right? We've got lots of antioxidants in LifePak. Carotenoids are some of them. There are flavonoids. There are some of the basics, like the different forms of vitamin E and vitamin C. So those are all in there as well. Those are important. Those are your foundations. So antioxidants and nutrients, super important for the baseline, the foundation. And as you take that product, your scanner score will go up, right? So now we go to the AgeLock platform. And,
Aging,
AgeLock's
yes.
a great word for, aging well, right? Where did that come from? Well, we always knew that genetics was probably a component of how long you live and how healthy you are during the days of your life, right? And most people, including myself, would think, okay, if you know anything about genes, you know that the DNA is fixed for life. It doesn't change. It doesn't mutate. Well, it's trying to mutate. It's trying to get damaged by free radicals all the time, but you have repair enzymes and you have antioxidants, right? If you've got good nutrition, then you've got all the cofactors that you need so that the DNA can be repaired by all those enzymes that need the vitamins and minerals as cofactors, right? And you have antioxidant protection. So let's go back to that. The DNA is fixed for life. And that means that what you got from your mom and from your dad, when they combined and you were born, those genetics that gave you the color of your hair, the color of your eyes, your height, and all of those characteristics don't change. So then what makes you think that we could even begin to use genetics as a paradigm for how well you age? Well, it's gene expression, right? It's not just the DNA code, but how it's being expressed, right? So of the 25,000 genes in your body that really create and maintain your body, all of them are told when to turn on and when to turn off, when to start making their gene products, whether they should make a little bit or a lot of it, right? An example would be, your the amount of insulin that's being produced, right? It's a gene product, it's a protein. So, there are switches, like a dimmer switch at the front of each of the DNA of the sections of the DNA called a gene. And so how do you study that? Well, you study that with a gene chip, right? This is a gene chip. It's amazing technology. This is a little silicon chip in here, and on that chip are 45,000 probes. And basically, you can get a swab of, just a small swab from your cheek, and you can isolate the messenger RNA from that. And we have this new technology that's been around for about 30 years now, just when I started doing immunology, called polymerase chain reaction, which basically expands, multiplies the small sample, and it magnifies it, right? So that now you've got enough to deal with. Now with that cheek swab, which has got all of the messenger RNA, which really tells me which genes are turned on and which genes are off, you put that sample on the silicon chip, and the more mRNA you have, then the brighter that probe will light up. And so you basically have a way of telling of all 25,000 genes in your body, which ones are being expressed at a high level and which ones are being expressed at a low level, which ones are switched off, which ones are switched on. Amazing amount of information there. And that's really cool. So now what do we do with that? a scientist named Weindrich who was studying aging. And he was actually, his concept was really interesting. In 1935, a scientist by the name of Mackay, actually, from New York, discovered that if you half-starve a rat, it will live longer. I'm going to qualify that, though. You reduce the calories significantly by about a third, right? So the fat, the protein, the carbohydrates are reduced, but you make sure that they get enough of the micronutrients, all the vitamins and minerals they need, but you cut down on the macronutrients, the calories. So the rats get kind of skinny and lean and mean, but they live longer. That was kind of an amazing observation in biology. It's since been repeated with all sorts of species. Weindrich was always curious about this, and he thought, well, it's hard to do it in humans, but let's do it in non-human primates. So he has they call them a colony of monkeys, rhesus monkeys, and for 20 years he's been giving some of them normal diet, much as they want to eat, and the others caloric restriction, and showing that these ones on caloric restriction are so healthy. Soon he was joined by Thomas Prowler, who's a cancer geneticist who knew all about the mysteries of the gene chip, and said, we need to look at the gene expression of these monkeys, find out what's going on. And so they do these, this is called a heat map, right? So you see here, the heat map shows if it's bright, it means that the gene is being expressed at a high level, and if it's dull, it means that the gene is being expressed at a low level. And so for 25,000 genes, you can see the different colors, meaning some are switched on and some are switched off. And here is treated, and here is not treated in the same individual. This just happens to be Joe Chang on this product, Vitality, right? But it does show that you can change gene expression. And so what they looked at, what Weindrich and Prowler looked at, was what's going on with these monkeys. These monkeys that are on this path to longevity, that have this strict nutritional diet that has been shown to be very healthy, how does their gene expression compare to the normal, right? And when you get that information, you see that they're quite different. And so now you can zero in, okay, which genes are changing? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so there's these key genes that are changing in their level of expression, some going up, some going down. But this is a healthy pattern. What do we do with that? Okay, so let me be clear. Our goal at Nu Skin is not to, put people on caloric restricted diets or anything like that, strict dietary regimens. But what if you could find nutrients that do the same thing? When you're on a path to health that's been demonstrated by a certain nutritional regimen, then what if there are nutrients that you could find in nature that could mimic that same pattern, right? So I'm going to share my screen with you again just for a second and show you another slide. Let's go down to here, right? Okay, what just happened? Let's go back to that. Oh, it's just a little bit slow to respond. Okay, let's go back to there and show you this slide, right? So here's the pattern. You can see the pattern of gene expression on the left. What we did, first of all, was we thought, well, we're not going to do this grand sort of caloric restriction thing. Let's look first at what happens as you age. One of the things is that we start to lose energy. We do know as scientists that mitochondria are the part of the cell that combines oxygen and fuel to give you energy, right, in the form of ATP. So these mitochondria are incredibly important for your basic energy levels. We know from scientific research, lots of it done, because this is a very well-studied area, that as you age, the mitochondria lose their efficiency. Part of it's because of the DNA damage that's going on there, because oxidative phosphorylation is happening, so you've got this metabolic exhaust of free radicals that the mitochondria really need to protect themselves against, but aren't always successful. So as they age, they start to become more damaged because of this metabolic exhaust that's kind of unavoidable, right? So let's look at the gene expression patterns of old versus young, and that's what we have here, the gene expression patterns of old mitochondria versus young mitochondria, all those genes that are building and maintaining the mitochondria. There's about 1,000 of them. We narrowed it down to find that about 170 of them are changing. Here, it's 52 of the genes that are changing dramatically with age in the mitochondria. So can you see the difference between young and old, right? So it says in the bottom, young and old groups from a preclinical study, right? So you can see that green I think in this case it's less expression, red is more, and then it changes as you age. So now with that information, we can feed ingredients to these individuals. And we had a library of about 50 healthy ingredients that we fed. And one of the ingredients was a really unusual one that we had encountered. Oh, I'm going to stop sharing the screen now for a second and go back to me. Right? Can you see me now? All right.
Yes.
Does anyone know what this is? Look at this guy. What is that? First of all, you'll notice that that thing at the bottom looks like a petrified caterpillar, and it is. It's a kind of a worm or a grub that lives in the high mountain plateaus of Nepal, right? And you'll see coming out of its head is what we call the fruiting body. So this caterpillar was infected by a couple of different funguses, right? Cordyceps sinensis, Hirsutella sinensis, a couple of these funguses infect the caterpillar. It makes the caterpillar hot, and so it goes to the surface of the ground, and then the fruiting body comes up, and it kind of looks like a stem of grass, right? And in that part of the world, the yaks and the horses that ate this were renowned for their stamina and their friskiness, shall we say. So these were,
Virility.
their virility, their shiny coats, and their ability to run for miles better than other horses and yaks, right? So this is pretty interesting. The Chinese cottoned onto this very fast, and they would dig the ground for this and find these things and grind them up and feed them to people. And they were just this basically a medicinal mushroom. Isn't that amazing? So this was worth more than its weight in silver. And in China, you'll still find these today very expensive. So the Chinese government actually said, well, let's find the perfect strain. The CS4 strain turned out to be the most active. And don't worry, you can actually just isolate the fungus, and you can incubate it and sort of grow it kind of like a yogurt. So it's completely free of the carcass of the worm. And you have this now ingredient called Cordyceps sinensis. And so that's one of the ingredients that in this study that we did genetically showed amazing results. So let me share the screen again, and I'll show you those results. It's a little slow, but see if we can go there. Okay, so 5 ingredients. Guess which one of those was Cordyceps sinensis? Okay, so again, feeding to old animals and then looking at the gene expression to see if their mitochondria gene expression patterns would be the same as that of a much younger animal. And yes, you're right, ingredient number 4 was Cordyceps sinensis, and it's barely distinguishable from a young mitochondrion, right? So that is an introduction to the age-lock platform. That's what we've been doing. We've been looking at gene expression and screening for ingredients that are healthy. That's where this product Vitality came from, which is part of age-lock R squared day and night, right? And it's also where the product Youth came from, right? So it's a longer story, but the Youth product is kind of more based on that sort of that wellness story. So both of these are amazing products that will make a huge difference. Obviously, I can only scratch the surface here in half an hour, but I hope I've piqued your interest. So social media is an incredibly interesting way to go. Certainly with the personal care products like toothpaste and things, it's very easy to have a before and after, right? And so it's easy to share on social media. Some of these other products like the scanner, like the age-lock platform, they may challenge you a little bit more. But that's, just think about it, and it may be not that hard, right? If it were me, I'd be like scanning on social media. I'd be showing people my score. I'd be showing people the products that I'm taking,
Mark,
and things like that, right?
yeah, they're really starting to get creative with the scanner and the especially tea green and different things on social media.
Right.
Happy to see that. I know that you talked a little bit about. I know we have a little bit of time. Since the R squared is on special on Monday, could you just
Right.
give us a quick synopsis? You just went into the age lock on that. If you could just give us something quick on that.
Yeah. So the age-lock R squared is based on, as I mentioned, I just mentioned the first half of R squared, which was age-lock R squared day, right? It used to be called Vitality. I think we still have a product called Vitality, but basically this contains Cordyceps sinensis and it also contains pomegranate extract, which is another one that we found that was really interesting genetically, and also our own particular new skin extract of ginseng, right? Now that's an interesting one too. That's an interesting story in and of itself. Some people get a little bit jittery when they take ginseng. It's an energy product. It's a really kind of a cool ingredient. But as I said, some people get a little bit jittery, even though they get sort of a bit of an energy boost from it. So this is because the actives, there are a bunch of different actives in the ginseng. There's an RG1 and an RB1. There's different ginsenosides. And if you balance those properly, then you don't get that jittery effect. So we've got 3 ingredients in this product. Now, this is designed around the mitochondria and sort of rejuvenating those and giving you the energy that you need, right, so that you can act and feel young. The other half of cellular aging is the ability of cells to repair themselves, to recognize damage and aging in the cell, and then to repair or replace that machinery of the cell. And in a similar approach, we use gene expression patterns to look at those genes that are involved in recognizing and repairing and replenishing and replacing old machinery inside the cell. That usually happens at night. When you're sleeping, that's when all that repair of the cells happens. So all of those cells in your body need to be young in order for your body to be young. So R squared night, which is a smaller bottle, which I don't have with me right now, contains ingredients that we use the AgeLock platform to screen and find that those are helpful, right? So that's the R squared. It's a fantastic story. It's about cellular rejuvenation from the point of view of energy and also, cleaning house of the cell.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm looking through the questions real quick. I mean, Suzanne, do you see anything in the questions that I might need to ask him before we close things up? Here is the R squared night. It's the smaller bottle. This is a mainstay for us. I've been taking R squared since before it was in the United States.
Yeah. Think of it like
So
if you're trying to clean your house, you need a vacuum cleaner, and the vacuum cleaner needs power, right? So this addresses those two things, right? You're sort of
wow.
rejuvenating the power systems of the house with the R squared day, and then the vacuum cleaner is like, you plug that into the power and you're able to clean the house. Without power, without a vacuum cleaner, the cells kind of age very fast, get very messy and untidy and aged.
Okay, well, I'm getting a social media visual on that. So all of
Yeah.
the social media gurus, I need to see a vacuum cleaner in the house with my R squared.
Yes.
That'd be fantastic. All right, I'm scrolling through here. Well, I know that our science is way more than we can do in 30 minutes or even 30 hours or 30 days. I mean, we have so much that we can dive into, and I know we really didn't touch on youth much. Would you be willing to pop back on another time here in the next month or so and maybe dive into just a small set of products for us?
Sure, I'd love to anytime. I'm traveling a lot next month, but we'll work it out. But just a word on the science. Just one last word. Okay, so the science is great, but I'm glad that I'm not the only scientist in the company. I'd hate to be in one of those companies where, here's a picture of Dr. Bartlett. He formulated all these products and he knows everything. I don't, right? Science is just such a broad field. I'm a cell biologist, but, cell biologists don't know everything. We have so many scientists in this company, about 30 PhDs, about 75 scientists all told. And so we have nutritionists, we have exercise physiologists, we have chemists, we have immunologists. So we have a critical mass of scientists that are all involved in putting these products together, right? And we don't always agree on stuff. That's how science works, but we work together and finally, that's what is behind these products. Not just one dumb guy like me, but a lot of smart guys that get together, right? So that's what's really unique about this company as well. Good science, good products, but it's really a good teamwork.
Well, Mark, I just can't tell you that how grateful I am to have you on today, and thank you for taking some time for us. And
My pleasure.
love to